Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another backlog cleared video. Today's backlog that I have cleared is Anti-Worlds. Now granted, there's only 8 titles, but it still counts. I have the complete Anti-Worlds collection, even though they're releasing 2 more in February. Anti-Worlds is the kind of sister company of Indicator, so by Powerhouse Publishing. They have spine numbers, but they're negative numbers, which I kind of like. Now, Anti-Worlds is a complete mixed bag in every sense of the word. Again, once I clear my backlog totally, which will probably be in 2 or 3 years, I will be getting rid of some titles, and I'll probably be getting rid of half of the Anti-Worlds titles, if I'm being entirely honest. They are completely a mixed bag. They are low budget films, small independent films, experimental films, documentaries, films of that kind of nature. There's no real kind of through line in the Anti-Worlds collection. I mean, most of the videos that I do on this channel is a recommendation of the films that I talk about, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend you go out and buy any of these immediately. Stop in the middle of your dinner and go on the internet and buy some of these. They did have a sale on. I'm not sure whether it's actually still going on, but they did have a sale on in the last week or so. There are some that I would recommend watching, and there's maybe only a couple that I would certainly recommend picking up because they are really interesting films. But with that being said, obviously you can let me know in the comments if you disagree and which ones of the Anti-Worlds are your favourites. So we'll start with -1, which is Chained for Life. This one is a 2-disc Blu-ray. What I will say about the Anti-Worlds, like Indicator, they are stacked full of extras. So these are 2 films by Aaron Schimberg. So we have Chained for Life, and we also have Go Down Death. Now, if you recognise Adam Pearson on this side, he was in Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson. He was one of Scarlett Johansson's victims in Under the Skin. So as with Indicator, you get a lovely booklet, and like I said, you get tons of extras on this one. This is a really good one, and this is the one I would maybe encourage you to see. Like I say, the second disc has Go Down Death, which is Schimberg's debut film, which is a kind of experimental black and white episodic film that has little folk tales and myths dealing with the darker side. But Chained with Life, Schimberg is a big fan of Freaks, the Todd Browning film from 1932, and was apparently obsessed with it and still is. So this is his kind of, not retelling of Freaks, but a similar theme. It's a film within a film, featuring films within that film. It's on the set of a film about this Russian/German doctor who wants to make people with disfigurements or disabilities, or people who are different, he wants to cure them and make them quote unquote normal. So we follow the shooting of this film, but also just how the cast of people who are different are dealt with the actors who aren't different. It's also a study of Hollywood vanity. There's a wonderful scene where actresses are talking about, hair on their chin. Meanwhile, you have like Bearded Lady, and you have Siamese twins, or not Siamese twins, but conjoined twins. And you obviously have Adam Pearson's character. He plays a character called Rosenthal in the film within the film. It's an interesting film in the sense it doesn't portray the people with disabilities or certain conditions as like stereotypes. They can be just as bad or good as everybody else. Everybody is balanced, and it's more about the reactions of the quote unquote beautiful people, rather than mocking the people who are different. Schimberg himself was born with a cleft lip, so as they say, he's used to being stared at himself, and treated differently until people actually realise everybody's exactly the same, and they just kind of look different. It has a commentary by Schimberg. It has interviews with Jess Wexler, who plays the Mabel, the lead actress in the film. She was also in Teeth, the horror film about teeth in a place you don't expect them. And there's an interview with Adam Pearson, and there's another interview with Sari Lennox, who's another actor in the film. There's 8 deleted sequences, a Super 8 version, a couple of shorts, and again on the second disc you get Schimberg's debut film. It's a really good film about how we kind of all treat people who look differently until you don't. And it's a nice satire on Hollywood's attitude to beauty. I mean, the film actually opens with a quote by Pauline Kael, pretty much saying, actors who are beautiful are brilliant because they have more range. Somehow they can play anything, which I'm not sure it's actually correct. We have spy number -2, which is Holiday, which is a Danish film. And this is the one of the films that I'll probably get rid of because I really didn't like it. It's about a young woman who goes on holiday. She is the girlfriend of some drug dealers. I think it's in Turkey or Greece. And they basically just spend the whole of the film having sex and drinking and occasional little bits of violence, and not really much happens, and there's not really much point to it. But again, that's just my opinion. You can let me know what you think of Holiday, but it's certainly not The Holiday with Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn. Next is -3, is Relaxer, which is another film from Anti-Worlds that I'll probably be getting rid of. Tons of special features. Again, we have another film, Buzzard, by the same director, so that's another feature length, which is just as bad as Relaxer. These are 2 films by Joel Petrikis, which I've probably mispronounced. The first one is about a guy who has a relationship with his brother where they just challenge each other, or the brother challenges him to various challenges, and the main one is to get to level 256 of Pac-Man without leaving his couch, and that goes to extreme lengths and extreme measures. I think it's supposed to be funny. It's not. The characters are pretty horrible and terrible and not engaging in any way, shape or form. Most of it is a static camera just focused on the couch. Buzzard, the other feature, starring the same actor, is about a slacker trying to con people and essentially trying to make money without doing any work. Again, not very engaging, not very interesting, and I'll probably be getting rid of Relaxer and Buzzard as well. But again, if you love Relaxer, you can let me know in the comments why. Next is another really good one, just in case you think these are all terrible. They're not all terrible. This is -4. This is Penny Slinger, Out of the Shadows, which is a really fascinating documentary about Penny Slinger, who I wasn't aware of who she was or who she is. She's an artist from the 60s and 70s who did collage and photographic work, but her art, to quote The Big Lebowski, is very vaginal. It actually makes you want to try and get some of her books, but they're out of print and really hard to get. That's the alternate cover with a big centipede coming out of her mouth. Again, you get a lovely booklet. Some of her art is really interesting. Again, it's playing on using the female body, her own body, and she does create some really challenging work at the time that was kind of poo-pooed, but of course now with the passing of time she's looked at a little bit differently and looked at being a trailblazer. It's a great documentary. She's still alive, so she contributes to the documentary, which is obviously a lot better. There's a 50-minute interview with her, and there's short films. There's a 21-minute video presentation from her first book, or one of her books from 1977. There's a lot of really good extras, and this is one that I would recommend checking out. Again, most of these probably don't have that many rewatches in them, but this one I think certainly does, just to see more of her work. Again, some people might view it as pretentious and not very interesting, but it's actually really quite good. The next one is one that I actually did a random review on. I think this was the first Anti-Worlds that I'd watched. It's -5, and it's Best Before Death, which is a wonderful documentary which follows Bill Drummond, who used to be in the KLF, if you remember, the 90s kind of dance band who had UK, I think the number ones, excuse me. And he has given up music and he wanders around the earth. He's been on tour for years, just going round to small towns, cooking cakes for strangers, making beds for people, doing certain tasks. It's one of those films that half the time you think it's a load of nonsense and half the time you think it's actually quite profound. Half the time you're kind of on his side, and the other half of the time you think he's just an idiot. But it's a really interesting film, and one that I would recommend checking out. Again, this has a 43-minute interview with Drummond, and the filmmaker pretty much asking what is film. There's deleted scenes, and there's a ton of extras. Again, you get the booklet and reversible artwork. So that's another really good one, really interesting one. Next is another strange one. It's -6, and it's Krabby 2562. This is an odd film. It's Anti-World, so it would have to be odd. It's set in Thailand. The island from The Man with the Golden Gun, with the James Bond film, is just round the corner. It's part documentary, part fiction, part non-fiction, um, part travelogue. At times it's really quite beautiful. At other times it's quite frustrating. Um, Again, I'm not sure how many viewings it's getting it, but it's quite interesting. There's an appearance by a couple of Neanderthals, literally, not just figuratively. Um, there's a nice interview with a woman who imagines she sees ghosts. It's a really odd little film that perhaps doesn't really know what it's trying to be, but it's kind of interesting while it's trying to figure it out. There's actually a scene from the film that's on a perpetual loop. So there's actually a thing that actually says it's infinity, the running time. If you want to check that out. And then the short films by the same filmmakers, Ben Rivers and Anocha Suwachaga, which is obviously not the real name, or not the pronunciation of their name, I should say. Again, lots of extras, interesting film. Next for me is the best film out of the bunch, and I know what you're saying, it doesn't take a lot, obviously, but this is -7, and this is Dogs Don't Wear Pants, which is a Finnish film by Jukka-Pekka Valipää. Again, not the proper pronunciation. This is absolutely fantastic. You could watch this in a double bill with Cronenberg's Crash. This is from 2019. It's, again, not for everybody. If you're offended by bondage and sadomasochism and putting bags over people's heads to get gratification and amateur dentistry, then you're probably not going to like this. But for me, this is the one film that I would highly recommend out of the 8, and one that I will be rewatching quite often. It's actually quite romantic, it's quite moving. It's about a man who is a surgeon who loses his wife a drowning accident, and he's left with his daughter to look after, and he gets involved with a dominatrix who chokes him out or puts a bag over his head, and he sees his wife in that state of unconsciousness and drifting off, and he becomes more and more addicted to that feeling of seeing his wife again. It's actually really, well, it's romantic in my mind, but obviously I recently did a romantic film video, and there might not be the traditional sense of romance, but I absolutely adored this film, and I'm sure, I think originally I'd rated it a 4, but I think if I watch it again it might end up being a 5 down the road, just because it's not just there to offend or shock. There is actually a heart to it, which I think matters, and again, like I say, it's a perfect companion to Cronenberg's Crash, as somebody who's desperately trying to find the way through grief, just in a different avenue. So for me, this is the best of the bunch so far, and probably by far. It looks gorgeous. The scenes in the dominatrix dungeon is beautifully shot with red and blacks, and the dominatrix herself works during the day as a therapist, as a physiotherapist, which again is a beautiful little touch. Because it's Finnish, because it's not like American or British, it's actually classy despite what it's showing. I'm sure if this was an English language film it'd be a lot crasser and less poetic, but for me there's a real romantic and there's a real heart to this film, even though the subject matter, like I say, might offend some people. And last is -8, which is the Whalebone Box, which is a kind of experimental documentary kind of film about a box with things in it that gets passed from person to person, from the present to the future. Again, it's an interesting film, but as far as rewatchability, probably not one for rewatching, and probably one that I will be getting rid of when I clear my backlog for good in the year 2026. So that's Anti-Worlds. Again, the very definition of mixed bag, but if you're in the right mood, there's a few little gems in there, but there's other films that are one watch only, at least for me, and there's probably 2 or 3 that I'll be moving on from, but certainly Dogs Don't Wear Pants is for me the standout out of those 8 titles. In February they're releasing Infinite Football, which is a documentary about somebody who's invented a new version of soccer, and Patrick, which is about a young man who lives and works on a nudist colony and somebody steals his favourite hammer. That's called Patrick. So we'll see what they're all about. But certainly that's the backlog cleared of available Anti-Worlds titles. Like I say, those other 2 titles are coming in February, I believe. So I hope you enjoyed this strange little journey into the strange little world of Anti-Worlds. Again, leave comments below if you've seen any of these films and what you think of them. And hopefully you'll join me again as I slowly get through my backlog. Yep. So this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying please don't put bags over your head for sexual gratification, and farewell.